Again, I'm going to introduce myself. My name's Nate Weber. I'm one of the board trustees. This is Bret Parke. He's the assistant administrator as well as general counsel. So you guys are going to have us the next 20-25 minutes. I'll tell you a little bit about myself. I know I did at the beginning or at lunch, but I am a Tucson firefighter. I work for the City of Tucson Fire Department. I'm a captain. I've been there for about 26 years. I was appointed by the Speaker of the House, Rusty Bowers, in 2021 to this PSPRS board as a trustee. I'm the board chairman for the Corona de Tucson Fire District Fire Board and have been since 2014, which was an elected position as well. I was the vice president for the Tucson Firefighters Association, Local 479. I did that from 2015 to 2023. And I oversaw the area of wages and benefits. And then I also am on the PSPRS local board for the City of Tucson. I was elected to that in 2012, and also serve on the local board for PSPRS of Corona de Tucson Fire District. I'm the board chairman of our Tucson Firefighters Association 479 Deferred Compensation Plan. We've had that since 2006. We were able to have a deferred compensation 457 plan separate from the city that our firefighters have the option to join or be a member of. They can be in our plan, the city's plan, or both. I also was a recipient of the Forged by Fire Firefighter of the Year Award in 2018 and the Greater Tucson Fire Foundation Award of Service in 2009. That's a little bit about myself, and I'll go ahead and turn it over to Bret.
Thank you very much. My name is Parke. I'm an assistant administrator at PSPRS and the general counsel. I maybe should have gone before Nate because I don't have any type of bullets that really represent the types of achievements that he has. But
I made most of it up.
I started at PSPRS in 2018. I've really appreciated my journey there. As you heard the trustees reference, we've come through a lot of change, and I've been part of that. I'm really proud of that. I started my law career with state government, and I've finished 21 years now. You can see kind of my general resume as what I've done. It probably doesn't speak much to public safety folks or much of this crowd, but something I'm very proud to mention and something that I hold dear to my heart is I'm fifth generation Arizonan. So born and bred right here, something I take very seriously, and I have a great passion for the state. I come from a military and law enforcement family, though I didn't serve in public safety or the police ranks. I did serve in the military as well. So with that, we're going to talk to you a little bit about the disability process. Trustee Weber has been, as you saw on his slide, a member of local boards for many years, so he's really going to take the lead on this. And if I have any flavor to add, he'll turn to me. So with that, here we go.
Yeah, so for the next 15 minutes or so, we're just going to go over kind of the perspective of the local boards, going through some of the disability process. I will say that it is up to the local board to do the fact-finding, if you will. However, I know we're going to touch this as we go forward, but it's also up to the applicant to make sure that they provide all of the necessary documents to substantiate or prove their case so that you have all the information. The applicant submits their application and documentation. Again, just like I stated, that's the applicant's burden. It's their responsibility to give you all of the documentation to prove their case for the disability that they're asking for the board to award. The local board accepts the application packet for review. There's a question here that says, can you deny? I'll defer you to you, Matt, Bret.
Well, I think that the more commonsensical and practical approach is that members not be denied an initial hearing on what they're filing unless it's completely frivolous, but I'd say the local board still has a responsibility to communicate whatever their decision is, especially at a initial application stage in writing to the member so that they can have the benefit of understanding whether they're going to go through a rehearing or a judicial process, which we'll get at a little bit later on.
Thank you. And one of the ways I read that question too is not so much as a denial, but if you look at that application and something's not complete, something is still required, they need more copies, you're not necessarily denying it, but you're also there, the board secretary is also there to help that applicant through the process, turn it back to them and make sure they have everything when they turn it in.
And if I might add to that, Nate, there is a provision in statute that says local boards have to have a hearing on an application within 90 days of receipt. So the board is on notice that the application's been submitted. That might be a basis to say, hey, we don't think the application is administratively complete, maybe, in that regard. And so a local board could have additional time to have that hearing if the application was so deficient as to require it to be returned to the applicant for more information.
One of the questions that could be asked is or are there industrial packets or prior past current history? I think somebody asked the question about workers' comp documentation. I will say, and I know it's addressed in here too going forward, but the workers' comp process is totally separate from the PSPRS disability application process. However, that can be some medical documentation to substantiate their case. A lot of times I'll look at that as if they did go through the workers' comp process. It's already made its way through that process and been awarded or denied. Again, it could be denied and the local board could choose to award it or vice versa, but it does kind of help in making those decisions that they've taken all the necessary steps.
Yeah, thank you, Nate. And I want to emphasize that as well, that an approval or denial of a workers' comp claim is not dispositive, or it doesn't control whether a local board makes a decision on a disability approval or denial. Another thing that when it talks about is are there industrial packets, prior, past, current history, don't forget about those pre-employment medical examinations also that are at the local board's access.
Perfect. Employer departmental records, memos, internal investigations. I think that kind of speaks for itself. What is the past injury history, a new injury or aggravation? That's some questions to be answered. Hopefully that's answered in the documentation they provide. Are there personal medical records related to the applicant? That applicant, again, is to provide those. You know, there's a lot of times where they've gone and seen their physician, or they've gone and seen a counselor, or they've gone and seen a psychiatrist, whatever. They've done physical therapy, they've had surgeries, so they provide all that stuff. So again, you have all the information that they can provide to you. Is the applicant stationary in their medical condition? Stationary means, are they improving? Are they improving, or are they getting worse, or are they stationary and that's where they're at? We talk about total and permanent. That stationary is total and permanent. And that's one of the things you're going to try to be looking for in some of the IME's report, as well as the information that they provide.
And Nate, if I might comment on
Absolutely.
that as well. There was a question to Joanne, and Robert and the membership services staff tried to address that, but that relationship between workers' comp, long-term leave, the stationary position of their medical condition. So it is important, and it can be more financially burdensome to an applicant if all those things aren't lined up, to make sure that the person has some type of coverage through the process. And so it should be really considered by the applicant, primarily because it's their livelihood and their financial circumstances, but also by the employer to see how that stuff can be lined up. And on the PSPRS side, there is a temporary disability as well. So there's an opportunity, even if the medical condition isn't stationary, if the person qualifies, they might be able to receive a temporary disability that's for up to 12 months. Thank you, Nate.
What is their current work status? That's a good one to ask. I know this is one that we touch on every year, but are they full duty? Are they light duty? Are they no work status? They leave without pay? And the reason those are important, just like it says on here, you can't be working Monday and apply for a disability pension on Tuesday. It's pretty difficult if you haven't gone through the whole process for you to be on duty today and tomorrow I'm hurt totally and permanently without any other documentation in between.
And that, I think, also kind of goes to the point of the financial condition of the applicant, that as you're going through that process, the employers and local boards should be able to help facilitate some information with that person about what may be the best circumstance that they can find themselves in, because You're not going to simply apply today and get your disability tomorrow. Joanne referenced it being typically retroactive to the date of application. I will give just kind of a high level view, but if you have an applicant submit, already they're injured and they've been spending some time there, then the local board has 90 days to meet. They might just take the position to say, yes, we're going to move forward with an IME, which then they need to identify and appoint, at which point the IME needs to reach out to the applicant and set up an appointment. We all know how how much time we spend in the medical system. So that could take some time. Then the IME needs to make a report, then submit the report, then the board needs to review that report, and then they need to schedule another hearing to invite the applicant back. So you can imagine the amount of time that can cover. So again, a little bit of insight into where we all come from is trying to help these members get the best circumstance out of the particular situation they're in.
Very true. Yeah, one of our responsibilities too is not to delay the process. We don't need to delay any answers or awards, making sure that we've gone through and done our due diligence and we've looked at all the information that's provided. We've set the IME appointment up. They've seen the IME. We've got the record back. At that point, if we have everything that we need, then we decide what we're going to do with that person. The next slide is the question that you're not getting what you need. You as a local board, you need more information. The applicant's not giving it to you. You should have an independent board attorney, which we've already covered before. That board attorney is hired independently for that board. You can consult with the board attorney. You can ask the chair of the board, talk to an elected board member, talk to the chain of command, payroll, city clerk, or department head. Ask the applicant. That's probably the first place to start. The burden of proof is on the applicant, as I stated. If you're not getting what you need to make a decision, then go find it. If your applicant is not participating or not providing information for your process, consider tabling the application until you get more information. One thing I would add on here too is we have tremendous resources between Bret and all of the PSPRS staff on the employer side, on the employee side, that there's a tremendous amount of resources that you can reach out to at PSPRS and just ask for some guidance. I know that a lot of the smaller boards, this isn't something that you deal with on a regular basis. A lot of times you're convening your board just to go through these application processes, so don't be afraid to ask just for guidance. I know that one concern on my end, and I think all of our end, is making sure that whatever is done by these local boards, which are hands of the main PSPRS board and system itself, is that those decisions are being consistently processed, consistently awarded, that we're doing the same processes with all of them. I'd like to think that if one person was approved or denied in Tucson, that they would be approved or denied at any other place that they would have worked within the state. And I think that's really our goal.
Absolutely. Thank you, Nate. The mission of PSPRS is uniform, consistent, equitable retirement programs across the state. There's a lot of variance across Arizona between urban and rural areas, differences in what employee benefits are to be had. I happen to be a trout fisherman, so if I was up north, maybe I'd have better access to cold water. It's not about pay, but it's life choices. But we want those uniform, consistent, equitable choices and decisions. Also, this is in the context of a disability. If an applicant's not participating, it might very well be tied up with their condition. So, we're in the process of making decisions, and we have a bureaucracy around that, but again, remember the face of the individual who's contributed to service for that community, who's thrown themselves in the face of danger and now may be struggling. Sometimes we just need to have a little bit of patience about that.
I would just say, I guess I would add a personal touch to that, Bret, in the fact that being in the fire service for 26 years, being involved in what I've been in, working with and knowing a lot of law enforcement, I think for somebody to decide that they're done and can no longer work and they apply for this disability application is very, very difficult. I don't believe in this line of work that we have firefighters and police officers that don't want to do this anymore. I've watched many of them retire, and it's supposed to be one of the most exciting days, but I think it's one of the hardest days as you watch them walk out and and leave what they've been doing and leave who they've been doing it with. So we'll go over a little bit of the ARS statutes, ARS 38-847-03. Just a heads up, I know that Joanne touched on this as well, but within 10 days of a disability or line of duty death application, the local board secretary must submit a copy of the application to PSPRS. The local board determines on disability or line of duty death benefit applications approved or denied. That will be reviewed by PSPRS or its designee.
Might stand in there for a second, Nate. So typically the membership services staff is reviewing that, and Joanne gave you a flavor, but often more is better with regard to not only the records submitted, but also the minutes and the local board expounding on what their decision was and why. So we definitely emphasize more over less in terms of content and context. And PSPRS, as well as the applicant, have a right to rehearing. So I think that all of us value our time and the time of our employers, and we don't want to have to do rework. So the best process is the one that it meets the standard on the first go round. So if we can avoid the rehearings, and I would say that to Nate's point, that means possibly reaching out and coordinating with PSPRS or giving us a heads up on what's coming, we might be able to point to some information or other assistance. I know, and I'll take my opportunity because I take a lot of calls and a lot of interest in PSPRS's role with this disability process, and I think one of the greatest roles for PSPRS for that uniform, consistent, equitable retirement programs is the local board employer retirement manual. Use it, know it, put it under your pillow at night. Maybe you can suck it up by osmosis, I don't know. And the model rules, which can be supplemented by the local board if they feel like there's something, but those are very good tools and they provide some context, and then if you need real humans, contact us.
The next bullet point before we move on was provides PSPRS the authority to require additional records from employers, local boards, or require a rehearing by the local board. Model uniform rules for local board procedure. A lot of this stuff is in the local board packets, local board procedures. You should have those for everybody that's on their local boards. But the Board of Trustees adopted amended model uniform rules at the December 2021 meeting. They can be found on the PSPRS website. Items to note, pre-membership physical, that's pretty important. Pre-existing condition process, disability applications, re-examination disability process, rehearing, and general provisions on hearings and rehearings.
So that pre-membership physical was mentioned, and I mentioned as a good tool to kind of have a record of where the employee came in. Very important, and it's something that the board has emphasized and was emphasized in the rules as we drafted them for board adoption, that employers do not have a right. Often where there's maybe some confusion or a little bit of disconnect is when the secretary works in the HR of the secretary of the local board works at HR at the employer, or has some other employer relationship, or the employer feels that the quote-unquote records would be safer if they're being held by the employer. That's not permitted. Those records are for the local board, and they should be segregated. And again, it's not that we're accusing anyone of bias, but it certainly could insert an inference of a bias if somebody was to make an employment decision based on a pre-membership physical that was really more for the purposes of local board business.
Thank you, Bret. Again, with the model uniform rules continued, please note, and Bret just touched on this, rule clarifies that employers and local boards cannot request pre-membership medical records, and that's what's highlighted in the box, but I'll save you the time in reading all of that.
Yeah, and studying for this presentation, I didn't know I'd be one slide ahead the whole time. Sorry about that, Nate.
Let's talk cancer issues. No PSPRS presumption for cancer as duty-related disability. However, if we're going to talk about the workers' comp piece, there are in state legislature and in state law, there is presumptive measures for public safety, police, and firefighters. That typically refers to the workers' comp claim and piece. Industrial or approved industrial claim is not required. Again, I don't want to intermingle between PSPRS and workers' comp. They are totally separate. Again, somebody could be denied on the workers' comp industrial process and be approved by the board or vice versa. Documentation of exposure history is important. Note exposure documentation can be key. Check with your department. Fire services has more experience and history than law enforcement in documenting exposure cases. I know in the fire service, every call that we go on is recorded. Every fire that we go on is typically flagged. Any hazardous materials response call is typically flagged. So medical calls, even with exposures, that stuff is typically flagged or easier to pull within your system, whatever system you're using. We also have a lot of firefighters that keep track of their own. There's a lot of different apps out there, and they'll record their calls or whatever on those apps. And that's something, too, that just kind of evolves with time.
Nate, as a question, and this is a curiosity of mine, but in your experience on the local board, have you had a lot of cancer cases? Or is that something that's more rare in terms of applications?
I would say, to be honest, Bret, it's a little bit more rare in comparison. The majority of them are going to be physical or PTSD, which the PTSD thing was new a few years back. And the cancer piece, I would say, it honestly is getting more prevalent as time goes on. So
yeah, PSPRS Board of Trustees at the beginning of their meetings make sure that they try to note, in-service deaths of officers and firefighters, and unfortunately about every month. And most recently, the Yule family lost a firefighter from City of Scottsdale. The Yule family lost a young firefighter. So I think that goes to underscore that it's not just something that happens later in a firefighter's career or a public safety member's career. True,
and interesting to note before we get to that next bullet point, and it kind of addresses that next bullet point just the same. It was about 2 years ago, I believe, that the career and occupation of firefighting is the only occupation that was deemed to be a level 1 carcinogen on the IARC scale. And the IARC scale is I believe it's the International Association of Research on Cancer. So that is pretty substantial. I mean, that is a huge ruling in the fact that just our job, just when I go to work every day, is an exposure to cancer.
Yeah, Nate, did I understand, wasn't there something about even the turnout gear itself that you guys have to don is actually sometimes carcinogenic? So it's not just what you're being exposed to in terms of where you're running into, but also sometimes the gear that you're putting on every day.
Absolutely, and that's something that's being found too. I mean, obviously as time goes on and new materials are developed and things evolve within the fire service and what we do and what we wear, how we do it, they're finding now that our protective gear, the turnouts that we wear, some of that has some of the PFAS chemicals that cause cancer in it. Some of the uniforms that we wear also have those same chemicals, as well as the fires or post fires that we go into and exposure from that. So anyways, that was one thing I wanted to touch on. And then we'll move on to the next piece, the independent.
Oops. Sorry, Nate.
That's all right. The independent medical exam by a licensed Arizona doctor. Again, that IME is going to be appointed by the board, and that IME is independent. That IME is also an MD, just as Joanne touched on. So whether it's going to be physical or whether it's going to be mental for PTSD, it's going to be an MD. And qualified IME doctors can be difficult to find. I know in some of the smaller jurisdictions, you may have to, you try to do whatever is the most reasonable and practical for the applicant, as well as your board and your municipality, but there are times where that firefighter or police officer may have to drive a little while to a certified or qualified IME. So,
yeah, don't really have anything to add on that, but I guess with that, I already unveiled that We're ready for questions, comments,
right,
or
that's it.
discussion. We made it.
Man, nice
Hey.
job. We did it.
With that, is there any questions for Trustee Weber or myself?
That was it. Man, I think we nailed it, Brett. Either that or everybody's sleeping after lunch.
Thank you guys for the opportunity to talk
Thank
with
you.
you.